Hello everyone, yes, this is a video or a series of videos I have been teasing over Facebook and Twitter for the last 2 weeks. It's something I've been meaning to do for a while, and I thought, while there's not many new releases currently coming out really of massive interest, I would finally do it. Yes, we have entered that time. It is the 20th of May 2017. In 11 days, it's my sister's birthday, but this is the day we start counting down my top 100 favourite albums of all time up until this date. Yes, today is the cut-off date, and anything that I like or find I like that gets released after this date, it's past the cut-off point. It's not going to be making an appearance on it if I hear it after this date. Now, notice that I say if I hear it after this date, because there is an album on here that isn't released for another few weeks, but I've already heard it, and we'll get to that. A couple of ground rules here. I've not limited myself to only one album per artist, because a lot of my favourite albums are like one or two by the same artist. That would be silly of me. However, I have tried to keep it down to about 2 albums per artist at the most. I think I've done that. And apart from that, all I would say is that you may disagree with some of my choices. That's fair enough. But please, if you are going to say something in the comments, make it a bit constructive. Don't just start going, oh, you suck because this isn't a metal album or whatever. Everyone has diverse taste in music. And basically, as I said, this is my personal top 100 albums of all time. For those who are wondering, I am 35 years old in a couple of weeks. So that would probably give you a fairly decent idea of what some of the albums may end up being on this list. Today's countdown is 100 to 90. So let's start and get into this, shall we? Now, before we get into the meat, as it were, of the top 100, and start that off, I want to sort of mention about 4 honourable mentions that were so close to getting into the list. One of them got knocked off the list because their newer album is something that has had a huge impact on me already, and it's not even been officially released yet. But we'll get to that later on in the list when I'm into that. But what you've got to remember when I start with these is these are my albums, these are my choices, and some of them aren't metal. Back in the day, back in the mid-90s, when I started really getting into music, I was a bit of a weird mix of a grunge kid and an indie kid. So obviously there's got to be some indie on here as well. And talking of indie, one of the honourable mentions is a Liverpudlian band. They were called Space. They're still going today. And the album, it has to be their debut, Spiders. This, as I said, all these 4 albums I'm about to mention became so goddamn close to getting into the list, but just sort of fell by the wayside when I realised that there were other albums that made slightly more impact on my life. Now, why have I chosen Spiders by Space to be an honourable mention? Well, it was one of the very first albums I remember actually buying. Before that, I was too young to have money, and when I did have money, the first albums I ever bought were Beavis and Butthead Experience album, which was a collection of metal songs from the 90s. That included 99 Ways to Die by Megadeth. I remember that pretty damn clearly. Probably the first time I'd ever actually listened to Megadeth. I might actually still own that album. I'm not 100% sure. But the other album was, of course, Space with Spiders, because I've been hearing the songs Neighbourhood and Dark Clouds, which absolutely love those songs. Then I bought the album, Female of the Species got released. I'm probably saying these songs in the wrong order in what they released, but this is the order I heard them in. And I knew I'd made the right choice. So I bought the album, and the album, even to this day, is very, very unique in the indie market, because it's got a sense of fun to it, while also having the ability to write incredibly catchy, absolutely awesome songs. Now, my next honourable mention has to be The Birthday Massacre and Walking with Strangers. Now, it's between this and Violet, to be honest with you. And both of them, I'll put them as honourable mentions, but I'll go with Walking with Strangers because I loved Violet, I really did, but Walking with Strangers has songs such as Red Stars and stuff on it, and this was the album I absolutely fell in love with it. The reason it's not on the list, well, you'll find out later. Basically, Another Birthday Massacre kind of just pipped it off the list a little bit. But there we go. And if you've not heard the Birthday Massacre, I'll probably say start with this album, Violet, or probably the album I'll mention later, but we'll get to that. Up next in the honourable mentions, Catatonia, International Velvet. Now, at the time, the only other sort of different indie bands around when this came out were Space and Radiohead. Now, I love both those bands, and they may appear again on the list. Who knows? Well, I know. You'll find out. Um, but with Catatonia, they come out and their song Road Rage, and it was Road Rage and Mulder and Scully really sort of started getting loads of airplay, and I fell in love with Keris Matthews' voice. She never tried to downplay her Welsh accent, and the band come up with some fantastic tunes. I love this album so much so, in fact, that when I saw it for sale in a Poundland again, fairly recently, in fact. If you don't know what Poundland is, it's our version of, for those in America, a dollar store, or basically you go in and everything is surprisingly a pound. And they do sell very old CDs in there, like brand new copies, but they're very old. And I saw this album, I thought, you know what? I've got to pick it up. I gave it another listen, and it still stands up to this day. Especially the songs Mulder and Scully and Road Rage. Now, I did buy the album after, which was pretty good as well, but didn't have the same impact on me as much as International Velvet. Now, the last honourable mention on this album, on this list, there we go, get my words out. Now, I love this band. I love this band so much that there is a story attached to this album, as always with these things. And it's Placebo with Without You I'm Nothing. Now, Placebo were one of the heavier sort of indie stroke rock bands I ever got into before I fully transitioned and evolved into the metal-loving beast that I am today. I still listen to Placebo today, still love their albums, still love their stuff, but Without You I'm Nothing, I'd got really insanely addicted to their debut album, the self-titled Placebo, which had Nancy Boy on it, and I heard this album was coming out. And when I heard this album was coming out, it was supposed to come out on a certain date. So I went to HMV, couldn't see it, and I asked the guy, oh, right, has the new Placebo album come out? He went, oh, no, unfortunately it's been delayed. I went, all right. Unfortunately, for the next 2-3 weeks, it kept getting pushed back for some reason or another. And I think I may have driven the guy behind the counter, because it was always him I ended up asking to quit his job, just so he could have to put up with a spotty teenager coming in every week, asking him if the new Placebo album had actually been released yet. But finally it came out, and I fell in love with the album completely. Brian Molko, top of his game on this album. Obviously, the song Without You I'm Nothing carries a little bit more pathos now since the tragic death of, not only recently at the time of recording this, Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, but also they used to play this live and had David Bowie do it with them live a few times. And obviously his tragic passing last year was not the best thing in the world for the music industry. In fact, it was a massive loss, along with obviously Chris Cornell recently. So there we go. Anyway, I've ended these honourable mentions on a bit of a downer, but hopefully this will improve. So let's get right into the top 100, shall we? In at number 100 on my 100 favourite albums of all time, as of 20th of May 2017. And we're already off to a bit of a strange start for many people, and I expect the comments will be lighting up with people going, why on earth did you choose that? Because it is Mortis with an album that I'm probably going to completely screw up the pronunciation of, because I do not speak the same language. But I believe it is pronounced Fottelhersk. I'm guessing that. I do apologise to the people of Norway if I have screwed up their beautiful language and how you actually pronounce that. Now, I do not know what that album actually means, but this album, that title, actually means in English. But this is one of the early days of Mortis. Obviously, he went on to the more Nine Inch Nails inspired industrial metal stuff that he's doing now. And that's not me ribbing him for that. He has admitted that several times in interviews that Trent Reznor and 9 Inch Nails were a massive influence on his music that he's doing now. But this was, I believe, his second or third album of what got termed dungeon metal or dungeon music, which is basically Mortis with a keyboard playing these kind of dirges, as it were. This album is actually only 2 tracks long. It's a part 1 and part 2 for Telehirsch, both tracks called. And yeah, it's just something unique about this album. Something you'll find with this list is that I tend to really like unique sounding bands and unique sounding albums. I have some silly stuff as well, and some stuff that is like probably going to be seen as incredibly commercial, but there we go. This is my list, and this is some of what I grew up with and what I ended up loving. Can't help what I love, but there we go. And he continued to sound for another 2 albums. One was called The Stargate, and the other album that has completely slipped my mind as to what it was called. But just this album, just something especially about this album. It's the kind of album I can put on for about, like, it's the last thing I listen to before I go to bed. It just kind of chills me out. And if you're looking for something a bit different, without any vocals, just pure sort of keyboard strokes, synth dirges, as it were, to help you get off to sleep, then yeah, I'll probably go with that. And if there's anyone out there who plays Dungeons and Dragons, I don't personally, but if you are indeed a tabletop role player, this would probably be really, really good as your kind of backing music, as your dungeon master's describing your world and all that. Now I've gone full on nerd, so let's get into the next number, shall we? Number 99 is an album that many will probably be surprised to find out I even like this band. It is Razorblade Romance by Him, or as many know it, the classic Him album. Now, many of you may have got into Him through their third album, Love Metal. That's fine, that's a pretty good album. But Razorblade Romance was the album before it, and it's an absolute classic. Basically, it's the album with that eponymous cover of Chris Isaak's Wicked Game on it. But that's not the reason I love this album. This, for me, is where Him really hit their stride and really perfected that love metal sound. Others may disagree. That's fair enough. They can say that on their list. For me, however, Razorblade Romance, it has songs such as Right Here in Your Arms on there, and many, many others are absolutely superb. A little bit on the commercial side, fair enough. Let's face it, Him have never been the heaviest band in the world. But Vil Vallo's voice is on top form here, and I don't know what else to say really on this one. Absolute classic, an album I dip into every now and again and listen to the whole thing. I can't do just one album. As with all the albums on here, I can't do just one song, sorry. I have to listen to the whole album. And this was the perfect length, all the songs, pitch perfect. And the icing on the cake, of course, was that absolutely superb cover of Chris Isaak's Wicked Game. So, yeah, in at number 99, Him with Razorblade Romance. I almost forgot the title then. This is going well. What's worse is I've got these written down on a list, so I shouldn't have forgotten that. I've still got 98 albums to get through. Damn. In at number 98 on this list of my favourite 100 albums ever, up until the 20th of May 2017, is Sum 41, an all killer, no filler. Yes, I don't just listen to hardcore metal all the time, or depressing indie, as it were. I do like myself a bit of pop punk every now and again. And the reason I've chosen this album is because I've got so many great memories attached to it. Back from when we used to go to a club down here in Southend called Rage. There's, of course, the other club run by Pitbull. Some of you may remember him from, I believe it was Total Rock he was on. He used to run a club night down here as well at the Minerva. And Sum 41 just kind of come out at the right time. It was quite good music sort of geek off to, but also to cheer you up as well. And you can't really deny that band is incredibly talented. This was probably my favourite album by them, obviously, because it had Fat Lip on it. What else needs to be said? Fat Lip and what's it called? And something about metal. No, it's gone. It's the last song on the album that become part of the video for Fat Lip at the right end when they're doing the sort of leather and spikes metal kind of part of it. Pain for Pleasure, sorry. Yeah, that's it. Those two I remember dancing to quite a lot. and geeking off to, as it were, in the South End clubs. And I just have very, very, very good memories with this album, along with listening to a lot of it and dancing with an ex of mine who has become a very, very good friend of mine, Emma Salter, as she is now known. She's gone off, got herself happily engaged or married, I can't remember which it is, and got a few kids and all that. I'm glad to see she's happy. I'm still glad to be very much in contact with her as well, because a lot of my exes seem to have an issue with me. Maybe it's me, but anyway, me and her danced this song, these albums, very stupidly back in the day. We weren't exactly the most sober of people back then either, but there we go. So yeah, in at number 8, the one only Sum 41, with All Killer, No Filler. Now, here's a bit of an odd choice that will take a lot of people by surprise, but this one I can blame my sister for, Amy. She introduced me to this album, really, back in the early 2000s, as it were. I was liking metal at the time, but still had my ear open for anything new and exciting. And here in the UK, there was a band called Alicia's Attic. Now, many of you know already who I'm on about. I had a couple of hits in the 90s with Indestructible and I Am I Feel. Kind of a Riot Girl feel to their kind of lyrics, as it were. But a much more, I don't know if I'd say poppy or kind of poppy indie sound to them. But their first album, Alicia Rules the World, even today, is absolutely superb. It's got some elements of goth in there that are very subtle and not many people probably picked up on them. But there's elements of goth in there which I probably drifted towards at the time as well. And just a superbly written and produced and indeed sung album. Unfortunately, on the next album, Alicia's Attic went full on R&B, and I completely lost interest in them. I had a few singles from their second album, and it did nothing for me. But if you don't mind something a little bit more commercial, definitely check out Alicia Rules the World by Alicia's Attic. Absolutely superb, with 2 superb singers and some really, really great songs on there. So yeah, that is in at number 97, Alicia's Attic, Alicia Rules the World. And here we are at number 96, in an album that is definitely gonna cause a fair few raised eyebrows. Well, the band more than the album. In at 96 is Limp Bizkit and $3 Bill, y'all. Now, we all know Limp Bizkit, and especially Fred Durst, have become poster boys for the hatred of the metal community. And to be honest with you, for the most part, for Fred Durst anyway, that is completely and utterly deserved. The guy has acted like a complete and utter tit over the years, and just really, really became like constantly name dropping people and everything. It got too much, and really the band started making really, really boring and half-assed music. But this album is their debut album, and the reason I've picked this on here is because this is one of the first metal albums I bought, along with Korn's very first album, Korn. And I still will defend this album until I die. This is what Limp Bizkit should still sound like. This has proper heaviness, proper screaming, really, really good, amazing riffs from the unappreciated legend that is Wes Borland on guitar. And if they continued this sound, I think they would have had the respect they probably have constantly been after. But no, Fred have smelt money. We got Significant Other, which was a pretty good album. Then we got Hot Dog, Flavour Water, and it went into becoming some kind of weird band straddling the metal and pop, like the mainstream, and it didn't work. And everyone's lost interest, really, in Limp Bizkit. But as I said, forever I will defend $3 Bill, y'all, because this album still stands up as an absolute high point of nu metal. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because as many people would use the words nu metal as a bad thing, I was always a fan of nu metal and still am. So there you go. In at number 95 is a late 90s band who were highly, highly underappreciated at the time. And the strange thing is that as they've made what in my mind has been more boring music, what I like to call the stereophonics effect, is they've become more popular. I don't understand why, but in here on my list at number 95 is Feeder with their second album, Yesterday Went Too Soon. Now, this album is kind of tinged with sadness because after the tour for this album, or during the touring of this album, and just before they released their the album after this, was called Echo Park. Sorry, that's the sad one. But what happened was when they released Echo Park, while they were touring that, their original drummer, sadly committed suicide, and it was a severely tragic thing. I've heard about that while in HMV buying a couple of albums, and it come on over the radio. And I'll be honest, I was gutted because Echo Park was an awesome album as well. But Yesterday Went Too Soon was my first experience of a full Feeder album, and this is what I would like to call, back in the day, commercial rock. You know, it is rock, but it's got very, very catchy choruses. It is very, very commercial. But as I've said before on podcasts and that, I don't view commerciality as a bad thing. It's when bands go from, say, being really, really heavy band to suddenly coming out with something that sounds like Aqua. That's when a band can sod off, in my opinion. And over there is a band I might mention later who have done that. But enough of that about that. We're talking about Feeder. Back in the late 90s, they were absolutely awesome. You all know the song Buck Rogers. That was from the follow-up album to this called Echo Park. This album, however, has songs such as 7 Days in the Sun. I believe that was on this album. Yesterday Went Too Soon itself, which is an absolutely sweeping and beautiful song. And one of my favourite songs ever, Day In, Day Out, which is a bit of a surreal experience with the lyrics and the feeling it generates, but absolutely superb. Honestly, if you've never checked out Feeder, check out this album, go up to Echo Park, then don't bother with any other albums, my personal opinion, but that's me. Anyway, yeah, in here at number 95, Feeder with Yesterday Went Too Soon. In at number 94 is a band who have gone on to being absolutely massive. In fact, they were getting massive around the time of the album I'm about to mention. I am, of course, talking about Matt Bellamy and his band of merry men, otherwise known as Muse. A band I have loved since their very first album back when they still sounded like Radiohead. But by this point, they'd gone fully into their kind of writing rock operas, as it were, and a really expansive sound that truly, truly supports them. One of the few bands that can make a 3-4 minute song sound like an absolutely superb progressive metal masterpiece. I am, of course, talking about Muse and the album, Black Holes and Revelations. Now, many would probably say their second album was better. I love that album, but this is the album that I listen to non-stop. Even started singing along to it, which is very, very bad for anyone around me because, one, Matt Bellamy's high notes. 2, I can't sing for toffee, really. So there we go. But I still stick this album on every now and again. And if memory serves correct, this is also the song, the album, with Night to Sidonia. That riff, man, that riff. So yes, if you go and get into Muse or have never listened to them, I'll probably say start with this. Black Holes and Revelations, here at number 94. Number 93, and a band that started off well, let's just say that. And this was released in 2000, and I am, of course, talking about Linkin Park and Hybrid Theory, another band that have completely slipped by the wayside. I mentioned it earlier about a band who went from being really quite heavy and quite good to suddenly sounding like Aqua. That would be Linkin Park. If you've heard their new stuff, I understand your disappointment. I really do. They've been kind of sliding out of the metal radar for a while anyway, but you go back and you listen to this album and you're like, what happened to you guys? Hybrid Theory was the ultimate mainstream new metal album. I think it's the best way I can put it. It's full of really, really talented and amazing songs. The band were at the top of their game. They've never bettered this in my eyes. And you've got Paper Cuts on there. You've obviously got One Step Closer. You've got the song that became somewhat of a poster child for emo culture. I'm, of course, talking about Crawling. One of my favourite songs I've ever done called A Place for My Head. And just from beginning to end, even though it's only about 35 minutes long, this is an absolute masterclass in what new metal can be and can achieve. But then the band released Meteora, which to me was just Hybrid Theory with slightly lesser songs and different lyrics. And then they started trying to become Alice in Chains or something, and then they tried to be Pendulum and just completely lost their original sound. And we won't even speak about their new album, which was released as of yesterday here, in fact, at the time of recording, because I would rather an elephant tread on my face than actually listen to that album. Anyway, Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory, in here at number 93. Number 92, and here we are, the first thrash album on this list, and it is by the one only Megadeth, one of my favourite thrash metal bands ever. And I know there are certain people, including my fellow podcaster, the one only Attic Ghost, who will take issue with them being on this list. But you know what? Sod it, I love this band. And this album, Euthanasia, in here at number 92. This is just absolutely superb, full of really awesome riffs and really, really catchy songs. It's been quite hard to pick Megadeth albums to put on this list without putting most of them on here. But also it's been even harder choosing the order of which to put the albums I did put on here, and where to put them in the top 100. The reason I've put this in the lower part of my top 100 favourite albums is because compared to other albums that may come up on this list, I don't listen to this one as much, even though it's an absolutely superb album. To be honest with you, it's probably a really good entry-level album for people new to Megadeth to listen to, because it's not only got the riff there, but it's got the insanely catchy choruses, and it kicks off with stuff like the name of the songs is gone. This is never good when you're trying to convince people. But yeah, just listen to this album. That's all I'm going to say. This album absolutely superb. God damn, my stupidly crap memory sometimes. But yeah, it's just absolutely amazing all the way through. And obviously the follow-up album, Countdown to Extinction, as well, another really good album, but that also has Symphony of Destruction on it, which by now I think everyone and their dog and their dog's lawyer and their dog's lawyer's cat knows by now. So there we go. That is number 92, Megadeth and Euthanasia. Now, for those who have been listening to my radio show, which you can catch every Sunday from 8 p.m. GMT, 3 p.m. EST on thatmetalstation.com, you will know that I am a big fan of industrial metal and also new metal as well. And also, I might have maybe dropped once or twice a little hint about a certain band I love, one that, you know, I may mention on every show and may possibly mention in the podcast a lot. They're a little band, some people have heard of them, called Fear Factory. And obviously, any band who comes out that even sounds remotely like Fear Factory, I will give a listen. One of those bands joined the new metal era was Spineshank. They were also signed, Dino Cazares of Fear Factory helped to get them signed. And in here at number 91 is Spineshank's second album, the one only, The Height of Callousness. Their best album they have released so far. I say so far because the band did reform and release another album a couple of years ago, which is pretty good, called Anger Denial Acceptance. Anger Denial... no, it's not Acceptance. It's Anger Denial and something. My memory again screwing me around. But anyway, Height of Callousness, absolutely superb. If you like your industrial metal with the heavier vocals and the more uplifting melodic vocals as well for the choruses, you're gonna love Spineshank, and this is the album I cannot recommend enough. Many of you will best know this album as being the album that had the song New Disease on it, which, if memory serves right, was also on the soundtrack to Freddy vs. Jason back in the day. And this is a band who should have been bigger, should have really got bigger. They were getting there, then the whole new wave of American heavy metal thing happened, and other bands that may appear on this list started taking off as well, and Spineshank unfortunately started to not get the kind of promotion support they needed from their record label at the time. But as I said, they reformed, and hopefully that's not the last that we're going to hear of them. with Anger, Denial, Acceptance. That's the name of the album. And hopefully I'll be back again soon. And they really were one of the best live bands I ever saw as well. But here they are, number 91, with The Height of Callum. In at number 90 and rounding off today's video in the first part of the countdown, my top 100 favourite albums up until the 20th of May 2017, Rage Against the Machine, their debut album, the one with the Buddhist monk setting himself on fire on the cover. That cover just perfectly sums up this album back in the day when it first came out. It really was a firework under the music industry, and was the prototype for what became nu metal. However, Rage Against the Machine had a very political heart to them, and this album is just pretty much perfection. Zach De La Rocha's rhymes and parts merging perfectly, with Tom Morello's guitars and the slinky bass and beats of Brad and Tom. Not Tom, the drummer, whose name I always forget. Apologies to him if he watches this. But it's the album with all the classics, Killing in the Name of, Bullet to the Head, the absolutely superb ending song, Freedom, with that primal scream by the one, Zach De La Rocha. Just every song on this album is superb. And then strangely, in 2001, the song Wake Up got used as the ending song for the first Matrix movie, which is a little bit weird, but there we go. But yes, in here at number 90 is Rage Against the Machine with Rage Against the Machine. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, numbers 100 through to 90 for part one of my top 100 albums of all time. Well, thank you very much for watching this. I will get the next part up over the next couple of days, and you've just got to keep watching them to find out what my favourite album of all time is. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to like, share and subscribe. Feel free to share the video as well. And I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.